Hello, Seahawks. Today you're going to be taking your first set of notes for 7th grade math. It is very important that you follow along and watch the entire video. You can pause it when you want. You could rewind it when you want if you need to. If you need to catch up, you pause it and then you restart it. If you need to see something again, you rewind and rewatch it. If you do all of these things, you will be successful in math. Pay attention while I'm going over things. Write what you need to write down on your notes page exactly the way I write everything down. Again, if you need to catch up, pause, rewind, those kinds of things. So today you're going to be taking notes on integers and absolute value. This is what your notes page looks like. On your notes page, you'll see up top we have some vocabulary words, and you may have learned about these vocabulary words last year. I know some teachers may have talked about them, all of them may have talked about them. And if you look at the directions right up top, it says to use Google or your math textbook or a dictionary and fill in the definitions. So you're going to look up those definitions. Then you're going to fill in a couple of examples. If you could put 2 examples, more examples, that would be great. You will probably hear the definition of these vocabulary words throughout the video as well. So, you may be able to fill in more information as you go. You may be able to put the examples in at the end. So if you could pause the video right now and get those definitions and fill them in and possibly put in your examples and then resume the video for the next part. Now you are going to find the absolute value of some numbers, and you just found the definition of the absolute value. The absolute value of a number is the distance a number is from 0. So we are asking, what is the absolute value of 12? That's what number 1 is asking. So when we look at number 1, we would like to know how far away is 12 from 0. I'm going to put a number line down here. In the middle would be 0, let's say. We're going to go 8. I'm just making out a number line for you. It's not perfect at all. I'm just kind of doing that quickly. This would be a -2, -4, -6, -8, -10, -12. Okay, now here is 12 on our number line. We want to know how far away this 12 is from 0. How far away is that from 0? Well, if we count, it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So it would be 12 away from 0. So the absolute value of 12 is 12. That's your answer. Okay, those little symbols, these 2 lines here, I'm just going to outline them for you for a minute. Okay, those are absolute value symbols, just so you know. And that's what that means. How far a number is from 0. That's how absolute value is represented with those little, I call them like field goal posts, okay? 2 lines. They're like bigger than an L, a lowercase l. Notice how they're a little bit longer. So the absolute value of 12 is 12. Then we want to know the absolute value on number 2 of -12. Okay, well, how far, here's -12 on my number line. How far away is that from 0? Well, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So -12 is also 12 away from 0. So the absolute value of negative 12 is 12. Okay. For the next one, I'm not going to draw a number line because that number line would be a little bit big, but I think you've kind of got the idea here. If you'd like to pause the video and try the next two on your own and then resume the video just to see if you were right, you can right now. But the absolute value for number 3 is the absolute value of negative 24. How far away is negative 24 from 0? Well, if negative 12 was 12 away from 0, negative 24 would be 24 away from 0. So the answer here would be 24. Number 4, the absolute value of 27. How far away is 27 from 0? The absolute value of 27 is 27. It would be 27 away from 0. And that is absolute value. It's very simple. For this next part, we're going to be comparing integers and absolute value using some of these symbols that you should be aware of. Now, it is extremely important that you know each of these symbols and their names. I know when you were younger, maybe in 2nd and 3rd grade, hopefully, after that you learned the symbols. You talked about, the alligator eating the bigger number, and that's how you could tell if you saw, you had, let's say, 5, you don't have to write this part down, 5 and 4, and you would say 5 is greater than 4, and the alligator would eat the bigger number, right? Okay, well, we are not going to be talking about the alligator anymore because we are now big 7th graders. And we are going to use those symbols and know what each of those symbols are. So just filling in the symbols into that chart there. If you'd like to pause the video and do this on your own and just make sure you're correct, you may. Or you can just go right along with us. The less than symbol looks like that. The greater than symbol looks like that. The equal to symbol looks like that. It's the equal sign. The less than or equal to is the less than symbol with one little line underneath, and the greater than or equal to would be the greater than symbol with the line underneath. Okay, that's greater than or equal to. It is extremely important that you know these symbols. You need to know which one is the less than, which one is the greater than, which one obviously you should know is the equal to, less than or equal to, and greater than or equal to. Okay, now looking at number 5, we are comparing those integers or absolute values. When we have an absolute value here, okay, we're going to find the absolute value first. So what is the absolute value of negative 5? How far away is negative 5 from 0? Well, negative 5 is 5 away from 0. So now we're comparing 5 and 4. Is 5 less than, greater than, equal to, less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to? Well, 5 is, and we're going to plug in, greater than 4, and that is your symbol that you're going to plug in there. Notice I like to rewrite the entire problem underneath. I think that is a good idea when they get a little bit harder. As we move on in the next few chapters, you're going to be doing a little bit more work for each side and then comparing. So I like you to show all of your work. On number 6, we have an 8, and we have the absolute value of negative 8. How far away is negative 8 from 0? Well, negative 8 would be 8 away from 0, so that would be 8. And 8 is, that would be equal to 8. Okay, number 7, we have 7 minus 5, and then the absolute value of that. So 7 minus 5 is 2. And then we want to know the absolute value of 2. How far away is 2 from 0? That would be 2. And then the absolute value of 4. How far away is 4 from 0? That would be 4. And now we're comparing the numbers 2 and 4. So 2 is less than, greater than, equal to. It would be 2 is less than 4. So those would be our answers. If you wanted to go back and fill in the original problem, you can. Just to be complete, these are our final answers. Okay? If you need to pause the video and rewind to rewatch, or just take a moment to get all caught up, everything that I have written down on my screen, you should have written down on your paper. For the next question, the question reads, while playing a game, you move back 4 spaces with your roll of the number cube. Your friend moves forward 7 spaces. The question is asking you to write each amount as an integer. Okay? Everybody always seems to have a problem with this question, but it's actually very simple. So we are going to write as an integer what it would look like to move back 4 spaces. So I'm just going to write, if I were to move back 4 spaces, how would I write that as an integer? Well, if I'm moving back, that would be a positive or a negative. Moving back would be a negative, and you're moving back 4 spaces, so it would be -4. That would be the integer for that. Okay, that's the first one that you're writing. It says to write each amount as an integer, so now I'm going to go and write my friend moves forward 7 spaces. So if you move forward 7 spaces, I have to apologize about my handwriting. It's not easy to write on this. Move forward 7 spaces, that would be a +7. Or you could just write that as 7. Okay? For the negative number, you have to have that negative symbol, obviously. But for a positive, you don't have to have the positive symbol in front of it. So forward would be positive, and back would be a negative number. Does that make sense? Okay, if you have any questions, you can write them down right next to the problem, or you could write it on the back of the page and you could ask me tomorrow or whenever we go over this in class. Okay, if you need to pause the video, catch up, you may do that at this time. Otherwise, we're going to move on. For this next part, we're going to be putting the values in order from least to greatest. Now you want to be careful because sometimes they ask you to do least to greatest, sometimes they ask you to do greatest to least, so you always have to read very carefully. When you are doing this, the first thing you should do is find the value of each integer, or in this case, absolute value. So we have -7 is the first one. That would just stay at -7. Absolute value of 4. How far away is 4 from 0? That would be 4. Absolute value of -5. How far away is -5 from 0? That would be 5. 6. Keep that like that. And the absolute value of -2. How far away is -2 from 0? That would be 2. Okay, now we are going to put them in order from least to greatest. So the lowest value here, I would look for all my negative numbers first. Now this one's kind of easy because we only have one negative number. That's obviously the lowest value. So we'll start with obviously -7. Now what I like to do is I cross them off as I go, so it's easier. Now I am down to 4, 5, 6, and 2. What would come next if I was going from least to greatest? It would be the 2. Okay, And underneath that, I'm going to write the original form. So this would be absolute value of negative 7. I'm sorry, this would be negative 7. This would be absolute value of negative 2. Okay, now I'm left with 4, 5, and 6. What would come next? Least to greatest. The next would be 4. And that was written originally as the absolute value of negative 4. Now I have 5 and 6. So next would come 5, which was the absolute value of negative 5 was the original. And then last we have 6, which is 6. So to put them in order from least to greatest, and again I would write them as evaluated, negative 7, 2, 4, 5, 6. It's easy to see that that's done properly, but then I would rewrite them back in their original form. So you should have both of those written down in that order. If you would like to try number 10 on your own, you may. So you can pause the video and do number 10 and then replay it so you can see if you get it correct. Okay, so for number 10, first you're going to evaluate or find the absolute value of the numbers you need to. So the absolute value of 3 is 3. 0 stays as 0. The absolute value of negative 5, how far away is negative 5 from 0? That would be 5. Negative 6, we just bring that down. And the absolute value of negative 7, how far away is negative 7 from 0? That would be 7. Now let's put them in order from least to greatest. What would be my lowest number? If you're looking at a number line all the way to the left. Okay, well, the lowest number here would be negative 6. And I'm going to cross that off. The original value was a negative 6. Next, I have 3, 0, 5, 7. 0 would be the next one. I don't have any other negatives, so I would put a 0. Okay, next we have 3, 5, 7. So the next one would be 3. The original form was the absolute value of 3. Cross that off. Next we would have 5 or 7, so I would say 5 would be next, which was the absolute value of negative 5. And we're left with 7, or the absolute value of negative 7. So here is your answer, your numbers in order from least to greatest. Here is them evaluated. Here is back in the original form. And I would like that all written down. I'm telling you that this is the best way to do this, taking your time, rewriting every integer. This way you don't forget any. Again, if you would like to pause to catch up, you may if you have to fix anything, or you can go on. Okay, for this last part, you're just simplifying the expression. Simplify is a fancy word for solve, if you could, or just simplify it as much as you can. In this case, we can get an answer, so we're going to be solving. Okay, if you'd like to try these on your own, now a couple of them, number 11 you could easily do, we've talked about that, the absolute value of negative 18, if you'd like to go ahead and put your answer down now. The absolute value of negative 18, how far away is negative 18 from 0? Well, negative 18 would be 18 away from 0, so that would be your answer for number 11. Okay, on 12, 13, and 14, those are a little different. Notice you have a negative symbol in front of the absolute value symbol. So that's basically saying negative absolute value of negative 18. Negative absolute value of 14, negative absolute value of negative 14. Okay, so basically bring down that negative symbol outside of the absolute value sign. Okay, no matter what here, your answer is going to be a negative because we have the negative symbol in front of each absolute value. Then you find the absolute value of negative 18. How far away is negative 18 from 0? That would be 18. So your answer for number 12 is negative 18 because of the negative symbol in front. Okay, 13, you have that negative symbol there. Bring that down. And then you're going to find the absolute value of 14. How far away is 14 from 0? That would be 14. There's your answer. And number 14, again, we're going to bring down. We have that negative in front. Bring that down. Absolute value of negative 14. How far away is negative 14 from 0? That would be 14. So your answer there is also negative 14. Okay? Now I just want to show you, looking at numbers 13 and 14, if we were comparing those, if those were both of our options, if I had a question that said to compare the negative absolute value of negative 14 and negative absolute value of negative 14, well, this one was a negative 14, this one was a negative 14, so they would be equal, just going a little one step further. Okay, even though they're two different questions, in the end they are exactly the same answer. Okay, if you have any questions right now, you should write them down on the back of the page so you can ask me in class for the next time I see you. Make sure you have everything written down that I have written down. The arrows, the extra example if I told you. The only thing you didn't have to write down was, I showed you something earlier that you didn't have to write down. I can't think of it off the top of my head right now. If you have any questions, please write them down and we will talk about them in class. Okay, have a great day, and I will see you soon.